Commander Susan Bailey stood at the viewport of the USS Defiant, her eyes fixed on the darkness of space. The stars looked the same as they always had, but everything had changed. 6 hours ago, humanity had been alone in the universe. Now 12 massive ships hung in Earth's orbit like obsidian daggers. First contact had not come with greetings or promises of shared knowledge. It had come with a demand: kneel or perish. Susan ran her hand through her short brown hair, a habit from her academy days that emerged when she was under stress. The bridge around her hummed with nervous energy as crew members worked at their stations, faces pale under the blue glow of monitors. "Any response from Earth Command?" Susan asked, turning to Lieutenant Jack Peters at the communications station. Jack shook his head. His fingers moved quickly over the control panel. "Nothing yet, Commander. All channels are chaotic. Every government is scrambling to form a response." Captain Alan Wright entered the bridge, his usually calm demeanor replaced with grim determination. At 52, he had served in Earth's space fleet for nearly 3 decades. But nothing in his experience had prepared him for this. "Report," he ordered. Taking his seat in the command chair, Susan stepped forward. "The alien vessels maintain their position. They've made no aggressive moves since broadcasting their message." The captain nodded, his eyes moving to the main view screen where one of the alien ships was displayed. Its surface was smooth and featureless except for what appeared to be weapon ports along its hull. "Let's see that message again," Wright said. Jack tapped his console, and the alien transmission appeared on screen. A tall, slender figure stood against a backdrop of what seemed to be a command center. The being had gray-blue skin stretched over an elongated face with 4 eyes positioned in a diamond pattern. When it spoke, its thin lips barely moved, but the words came through clearly in English. "People of Earth, we are the Vixari Dominion. Your planet has been claimed as a resource world for our empire. You will surrender your governments, your military forces, and your key resources to our authority. You will kneel before the Dominion or you will perish. You have 48 Earth hours to broadcast your surrender. Resistance is meaningless." The message ended abruptly, leaving the bridge in silence. "Friendly bunch," Susan muttered. Captain Wright stood up and paced the bridge. Lieutenant Peters continued attempts to establish a dialogue. "Maybe they'll talk beyond just threats. Commander Bailey, I want sensor scans of those ships. Look for anything that might tell us about their capabilities." "Already on it, sir," Susan replied, moving to the science station where Officer Diane Lewis was analyzing data. Diane looked up as Susan approached. "Commander, these readings are unlike anything I've seen. Their hull material absorbs most of our sensor scans, but I'm detecting unusual energy signatures at regular intervals along their ships." Susan leaned over to study the readings. Something about the pattern seemed familiar. "Can you isolate those signatures and run them through the database?" While Diane worked, Captain Wright received a transmission from Earth's United Defense Coalition. Admiral Paul Johnson's face appeared on screen, lines of worry etched deeply around his eyes. "Captain Wright, we're coordinating a global response. All major powers are in emergency sessions. What can you tell us about these Vixari?" Wright shared what little information they had gathered. "Admiral, they appear technologically superior, but we haven't seen their weapons in action yet. Commander Bailey is analyzing some unusual energy readings." As if on cue, Susan called from across the bridge. "Captain, I think we've found something." Wright excused himself from the Admiral and joined Susan at the science station. "What have you got?" "The energy signatures from the Vixari ship cycle in a predictable pattern," Susan explained, pointing to the wavelength displayed on the screen. "And they match some of our theoretical models for quantum shield harmonics." "Are you saying we might understand their shielding technology?" Wright asked. "Not completely," Susan admitted, "but there's a familiarity to it that suggests their technology might have evolved along paths not entirely different from our theoretical models. If that's true, there could be weaknesses we can identify." The ship's alert system suddenly blared, and Lieutenant Frank Collins at Tactical shouted, "Captain, one of the alien vessels is breaking formation. It's heading toward Luna Base." "Red alert," Wright ordered. "All hands to battle stations." The crew moved with practiced efficiency as the Defiant systems shifted to combat readiness. On the view screen, they watched as one of the smaller Vixari ships approached Earth's moon, where the research facility Luna Base housed 3,000 civilians and military personnel. "Hail them," Wright commanded. "Tell them Luna Base is a scientific outpost with civilians." Jack tried to establish communication, but the Vexari ship gave no response. Instead, it fired a single beam of green energy at the lunar surface. The impact created a blinding flash, and when it faded, a crater stood where the eastern section of Luna Base had been. "My God," Susan whispered. Sensor readings confirmed immediate casualties. The Vexari had just killed hundreds of people in a single strike. The alien ship turned and rejoined the fleet in Earth orbit. Moments later, another transmission came through. "People of Earth, that was a demonstration. Your weapons cannot harm us. Your defenses cannot stop us. 47 hours remain for your surrender." Captain Wright's hands gripped the arms of his command chair until his knuckles turned white. "Get me Earth Command, now." Within hours, the USS Defiant was recalled to Earth, where an emergency summit of world leaders and military commanders convened at the Underground Strategic Command Center in Nebraska. Susan found herself standing beside Captain Wright in a room filled with the most powerful people on the planet, all facing the same impossible choice. General Kevin Howard of the North American Defense Force presented the military assessment. "Their technology appears to be centuries ahead of ours. Conventional weapons will likely be useless against their shields. So we surrender?" asked the Chinese premier, her translator barely keeping up with her rapid speech. "Not necessarily," said Dr. Olivia Martinez, entering the room with a tablet in hand. As head of the Quantum Defense Initiative, she had been analyzing the Defiant sensor data. Commander Bailey's observations were correct. The Vexari shields operate on principles similar to our theoretical models. Susan stepped forward. "Dr. Martinez, are you suggesting we might have a way to penetrate their defenses?" Olivia nodded, her eyes bright despite her obvious exhaustion. "Their shield harmonic cycle in a predictable pattern. If we can synchronize our weapons to match that cycle at the precise moment of vulnerability, we might breach their shields." "Might?" General Howard questioned. "We need more than theoretical possibilities." "It's not just theory," Susan argued. Lieutenant Collins on the Defiant discovered that the radiation signature from the Vexari weapons matches our abandoned phase shift technology project. Dr. Martinez pulled up schematics on the main display. "She's right. The project was shelved years ago because of instability issues, but the principles are sound. We could adapt our existing weapon systems." The room erupted in debate. Some argued for immediate surrender to prevent more deaths. Others insisted humanity should fight, even against overwhelming odds. Throughout it all, Susan noticed something spreading through the room. Not just fear, but determination. President Diane Foster finally stood, silencing the discussion. "The Vexari think they know us. They believe we will surrender rather than face extinction. They've conquered 17 worlds before ours and none resisted." She looked around the room. "But they don't understand humans. We don't kneel easily." She turned to Dr. Martinez. "How quickly can you adapt our weapons? With global cooperation and resources? Days, maybe weeks." "We have hours," the president reminded her. Susan stepped forward. "Then we need to buy time. Make them think we're considering surrender while we prepare." Captain Wright nodded. "A delaying tactic while we position our forces." "And if they see through it?" asked the Russian president. Captain Wright's expression was grim. "Then humanity goes down fighting instead of on its knees." As the meeting adjourned, Susan looked at the tactical display showing the Vexari ships positioned around Earth. They had come expecting submission from a primitive species. Instead, they would learn what humans did when cornered. They fought back with everything they had. The Vexari had ordered Earth to kneel. Humanity's answer would come soon enough, and it would be written in fire and ruin. Dr. Olivia Martinez rubbed her tired eyes as she stared at the screen filled with equations and waveform patterns. The underground facility in Colorado hummed with activity as scientists and engineers worked around the clock. 3 days had passed since the Vexari ultimatum, yet Earth still stood. The aliens had extended their deadline after receiving messages suggesting humanity was preparing a formal surrender. It was a lie, of course, a desperate play for time. Olivia had not slept more than 2 hours at a stretch since the aliens arrived. Coffee cups littered her workstation, and her dark hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. As head of the Quantum Defense Initiative, she now led the most important scientific project in human history. Their mission was simple yet seemingly impossible. Find a way to defeat an enemy centuries ahead in technological development. "Dr. Martinez," called a voice from across the lab. Lieutenant Frank Collins from the USS Defiant approached with a tablet in hand. The young officer had been assigned to her team after discovering the connection between Vexari energy signatures and Earth's experimental phase shift technology. Please tell me you have good news. Lieutenant, Olivia said, taking the tablet from him. Frank nodded, his expression brightening. The simulations worked. We managed to synchronize our prototype weapon with the Vexari shield frequency. Olivia scrolled through the data, her exhaustion momentarily forgotten. This is promising, but simulation isn't reality. We need to test it against actual Vexari technology. That's the other thing, Frank said, lowering his voice. Command approved Captain Wright's proposal. The USS Valiant is being fitted with the prototype weapons now. They're going to attempt to capture a Vexari scout ship. Olivia's eyes widened. When? Within 24 hours. Near Europa. The news sent a surge of both hope and fear through Olivia. Their theories would finally be tested. But if they were wrong, the Vexari would know humanity was planning resistance, not surrender. Across the world, similar scenes played out in hidden facilities. In an underground factory in Sweden that once manufactured civilian vehicles, assembly lines now produced modified missile casings designed to house phase shift technology. In Australia, pilots trained in simulators programmed with the little data they had on Vexari ship movements. In Brazil, a former satellite communications center had been converted to monitor and analyze every signal coming from the alien fleet. The Vexari, meanwhile, maintained their position around Earth. Occasional demonstrations of power, a military base destroyed here, a naval vessel vaporized there, served as reminders of their technological superiority. Yet they seemed content to wait for humanity's formal surrender, unaware of the activity taking place beneath the surface. At the Strategic Command Center in Nebraska, Commander Susan Bailey stood before a holographic display showing the positions of Earth's hidden fleet. Small blue dots represented vessels that had been pulled back from their usual stations and equipped with the experimental weapons Dr. Martinez's team had developed. It's not much, General Kevin Howard remarked, standing beside her. It's all we have, Susan replied. If Dr. Martinez's adaptations work, it might be enough to give us a fighting chance. The general studied the display. And if they don't? Susan had no answer for that. Instead, she focused on the mission details for the USS Valiant. Captain Nathan Russell would lead the ambush near Jupiter's moon Europa, where Vexari scout ships had established a regular patrol route. If they could capture a scout ship intact, the technology they could salvage might give humanity the edge it desperately needed. Commander Bailey called a communications officer. We have a secure transmission from Dr. Martinez. Susan moved to a private terminal and accepted the call. Olivia's tired face appeared on screen. Commander, we've made a breakthrough, she said without preamble. The phase shift technology is stable in our latest tests. We believe it will allow our weapons to bypass the Vexari shields for approximately 3 seconds before their systems adapt. 3 seconds might be enough, Susan said. What about the radiation risk to our crews? We've developed shielding that should protect them for short exposures. It's not perfect, but we're out of time for perfect, Susan finished. I understand. I'll relay this to the Valiant. After the call ended, Susan returned to the command center where President Diane Foster had arrived for a briefing. The president looked composed despite the weight on her shoulders, her gray suit as crisp as if this were any normal day in office. Madam President, General Howard greeted her. We were just reviewing the Valiant mission. President Foster nodded to him, then turned to Susan. Commander Bailey, I understand you've been coordinating with Dr. Martinez directly. What's your assessment? Susan chose her words carefully. The technology is untested against actual Vexari shields, but the simulations are promising. Captain Russell and his crew know the risks. And they're still willing to go? The president asked. Yes, ma'am. Every person on that ship volunteered. President Foster studied the holographic display for a long moment. This goes against every diplomatic principle. The Vexari think we're preparing to surrender while we're actually planning an attack. With respect, Madam President, Susan said. They destroyed Luna Base after announcing themselves. They've shown no interest in true diplomacy. They want submission, not peace, the president sighed. I know. I just want to be certain we've exhausted every alternative. We've sent 17 different peace proposals, General Howard pointed out. They've rejected each one with the same response, kneel or perish. Then we have no choice, President Foster said. Proceed with the mission. Near Jupiter, the USS Valiant waited in the shadow of Europa. The ship's systems were running at minimal power to avoid detection, and the crew spoke in hushed tones despite knowing the vacuum of space wouldn't carry sound. Captain Nathan Russell stood on the bridge, watching the chronometer count down to the expected arrival of the Vexari scout. All departments report ready. "Captain," said his first officer, Commander Greg Wilson. Nathan nodded. "Weapon status?" Phase shift torpedoes armed and locked. "Targeting systems aligned with the predicted shield frequencies," reported Weapons Officer Lisa Winters. "Remember," Nathan addressed the bridge crew, "we only get one shot at this. If we miss or if the torpedoes don't penetrate their shields, we'll alert their entire fleet to our intentions." The crew acknowledged with determined nods. They had trained for this moment over the past 48 hours, running simulation after simulation. Now they would discover if humanity's desperate gamble would pay off or doom them all. "Contact approaching," announced the sensor officer. "Vexari scout ship on expected trajectory." "Battle stations," Nathan ordered quietly. "Bring engines to standby. Prepare to emerge on my mark." The scout ship came into view, its sleek form gliding past Europa on its regular patrol route. It was smaller than the main Vexari vessels orbiting Earth, but still twice the size of the Valiant. Its hull gleamed in the distant sunlight, seemingly impervious. Nathan took a deep breath. 3, 2, 1, mark. The Valiant's engines flared to life, propelling the ship out from behind Europa. The element of surprise gave them precious seconds as the Vexari scout detected their presence and began to turn. "Fire torpedoes," Nathan commanded. Lisa Winters pressed the launch sequence. Torpedoes away. 2 modified weapons streaked toward the Vexari vessel. On the view screen, the crew watched as the torpedoes approached the alien ship. A shimmer of energy indicated the presence of the Vexari shields. For a heart-stopping moment, it seemed the torpedoes would simply bounce off like conventional weapons. Instead, they passed through the shield as if it weren't there. "Direct hit," Lisa exclaimed as the torpedoes struck the Vexari hull. The alien ship's lights flickered and it began to drift. No explosion, no dramatic destruction. Just a sudden loss of power that left it vulnerable. "Their engines are offline," reported the sensor officer. "Minimal power readings. Life support appears intact." Nathan didn't waste a moment. "Bring us alongside. Prepare boarding teams. We have minutes at most before they get emergency systems online." As the Valiant moved toward the disabled scout ship, an alarm sounded. "Captain," called the communications officer. "We're receiving a transmission from the Vexari vessel." On screen, Nathan ordered. A Vexari face appeared, its 4 eyes blinking in what might have been shock or anger. "Human vessel," it said in that same coldly precise English they had used in their ultimatum to Earth. "This attack is futile. Our main fleet will destroy your world for this treachery." Nathan stepped forward. "Your fleet will learn that humans don't kneel to threats. We'd rather die on our feet than live on our knees." He signaled to cut the transmission and turned to his first officer. "Begin the boarding operation. I want that ship secured and its technology analyzed before their fleet knows what happened." As boarding teams prepared to capture Earth's first piece of Vexari technology, Nathan knew the real war was just beginning. The aliens had expected surrender. Instead, they would learn that humanity had chosen to fight. The Vexari had ordered Earth to kneel, but Earth's answer would be fire and ruin. The captured Vexari scout ship arrived at the hidden facility near Mars under heavy escort. Earth had kept the operation secret for as long as possible, but the main Vexari fleet orbiting Earth now knew of the attack. Their response was swift and merciless. Bombardments began targeting military installations across the planet. Millions died in the first wave as orbital strikes hit bases in North America, Asia, and Europe. Inside the Mars facility, engineers and scientists worked frantically to understand the alien technology. Dr. Olivia Martinez led the team examining the ship's propulsion and weapon systems. Her hands moved carefully over the strange materials, her mind racing to comprehend principles that seemed to defy Earth's understanding of physics. "The shield generator is unlike anything we've theorized," she told Commander Susan Bailey, who had been sent to oversee the operation. "It doesn't just block attacks. It shifts them into another phase of reality." Susan studied the holographic display showing the generator's inner workings. "Can we replicate it?" "Not quickly," Olivia admitted. "But we can adapt our weapons based on what we've learned." The phase shift torpedoes worked better than expected. With these insights, we can improve them further. On a nearby workstation, Lieutenant Jack Peters studied the Vexari communication system they had salvaged. As the ship's previous communications specialist, he had a natural aptitude for languages and code systems. For 3 days straight, he had immersed himself in Vexari transmissions looking for patterns for weaknesses. "Commander," he called, waving Susan over. "I think I found something important." Susan joined him at his station. "What is it?" "Their battle network," Jack explained, pointing to sequences on his screen. "They're so confident in their superiority that their security is minimal. They never expected us to understand their language, let alone their code." "Are you saying we can access their communications?" Susan asked, hardly daring to hope. Jack nodded, his eyes bright despite his exhaustion. "Not just communications. Their entire battle network. Ship positions, attack plans, everything. This discovery changed everything. While Earth suffered under the Vexari bombardment, a plan began to form. If they could access the alien battle network, they could anticipate attacks. Combined with the improved phase shift weapons, humanity might have a fighting chance. Back on Earth, the situation grew more desperate by the hour. Captain Alan Wright now commanded Earth's orbital defense from the newly commissioned USS Defiance, a ship built in secret and equipped with the first generation of technology derived from the Vexari scout ship. Status report, Alan requested as the Defiance maintained its hidden position behind a field of orbital debris. "Vexari landing forces have touched down in 8 major cities," reported his tactical officer. "Ground resistance is heavy but outmatched. Chicago is completely surrounded. Sydney has fallen. Moscow is holding but barely." Alan studied the tactical display. The Vexari had expected Earth to surrender after the initial bombardment. They hadn't anticipated the level of resistance they now faced. Emergency protocols established after first contact had moved millions of civilians to underground shelters. Military forces had dispersed to hardened positions. Earth was bloodied but far from defeated. "Any word from the Mars facility?" Alan asked. "Yes, sir. Commander Bailey reports a breakthrough. They've accessed the Vexari battle network and are transmitting tactical data now." Alan's expression remained calm, but hope sparked in his eyes. "Upload it to our targeting systems. Prepare to deploy the modified satellites." The plan was audacious. While the Vexari focused on ground operations, the Defiance would deploy a network of satellites equipped with phase shift technology. These would create a web that could disrupt Vexari targeting systems and provide cover for Earth's counterattack. "Satellites ready for deployment," announced the weapons officer. "Launch," Alan ordered. The battle for Earth's survival had entered a new phase. In Chicago, the fighting raged through downtown streets. Vexari ground forces had expected minimal resistance but instead met coordinated opposition. Local police and military units had been supplemented by civilian volunteers. They fought building to building, street to street, using knowledge of the urban environment to their advantage. Unknown to the Vexari commander, the entire city grid had been rigged with phase shift emitters based on Dr. Martinez's designs. As alien troops surrounded the central business district, preparing for their final push, the trap was sprung. Police Chief Sam Rogers gave the order from a fortified position in the old public library. "Activate the grid." Across Chicago, the hidden emitters powered up simultaneously. Energy pulses rippled through the streets, invisible to human eyes but devastating to Vexari technology. Their weapons failed, their communication devices went silent, and their personal shields collapsed. The effect lasted only 30 seconds, but it was enough. In that brief window, Earth forces launched their counterattack. Conventional weapons that had previously been useless against Vexari shields now found their targets. An entire division of alien troops was disabled or killed in the surprise assault. The Chicago victory became a turning point. The same strategy was quickly adapted for other cities. The Vexari, facing unexpected losses on the ground, increased their orbital bombardment. But the satellite network deployed by the Defiance was beginning to show results. Many Vexari weapons now missed their targets or failed to fire altogether. In orbit, the Defiance emerged from hiding to engage a Vexari destroyer. Captain Wright stood calmly on the bridge as his ship moved into attack position. "Phase shift weapons locked on target," reported the tactical officer. "Fire," Alan commanded. The improved weapons struck the Vexari vessel with precision. Its shields flickered and failed, and follow-up strikes crippled its propulsion system. It was not destroyed, but it was no longer a threat. The Vexari fleet responded immediately, turning their attention to this new challenger. The Defiance found itself targeted by 3 enemy vessels simultaneously. Evasive maneuvers, Alan ordered. Deploy countermeasures. The ship rocked under enemy fire, but the modified shields held. The Defiance's purpose had never been to win a direct confrontation. Its mission was to draw attention, to prove that humanity could fight back, and to buy time for the next phase of Earth's defense plan. At the Mars facility, Commander Susan Bailey received word of the Defiance's engagement. Status of Project Firestorm? She asked Dr. Martinez. Final calibrations complete, Olivia replied. The planetary defense grid is ready for activation. Susan took a deep breath. Transmit the activation codes to all stations. Across Earth, in hidden bunkers and fortified positions, operators received the codes. The planetary defense grid, a network of hastily constructed emitters based on Vexari technology, powered up for the first time. If it worked as designed, it would create a phase shift field around the entire planet, neutralizing the Vexari advantage. In orbit, the Defiance was taking heavy damage. 2 of its engines were offline, and hull breaches had been reported on multiple decks. Captain Wright ordered damaged sections sealed and continued the fight. Sir, called the communications officer. Message from Earth Command. Project Firestorm is activating. Alan nodded. All hands brace for phase shift. The planetary defense grid activated with a surge of power that temporarily disrupted electrical systems worldwide. In orbit, both Earth and Vexari vessels experienced momentary system failures, but when systems restored, the balance had shifted. The Vexari ships found their targeting systems malfunctioning. Their energy weapons dissipated harmlessly before reaching Earth's atmosphere. Their communications with ground forces cut off completely. On the Vexari command ship, High Commander Zexar watched in disbelief as his fleet's advantage evaporated. Impossible, he hissed to his subordinates. These primitives cannot have mastered phase shift technology so quickly. He opened a channel to all ships. Prepare the gravity weapon. If we cannot have this world, we will tear it apart. The Vexari flagship began to power up its doomsday weapon, a gravity manipulator capable of destroying planets. Earth had minutes at most before the weapon reached full power. But the Vexari had not accounted for Lieutenant Jack Peters and his access to their battle network. The moment the gravity weapon began powering up, alarms sounded in command centers across Earth. They're charging some kind of super weapon, Jack reported to Susan and Olivia on Mars. Olivia's face paled as she studied the energy readings. It's a gravity manipulator. If it fires, Earth is finished. Susan turned to her communications officer. Signal Captain Wright. He needs to stop that weapon now. Aboard the damaged Defiance, Alan received the urgent message. Despite his ship's condition, he knew what had to be done. Plot intercept course with the Vexari flagship. Divert all power to engines and weapons. Sir, at our current damage level, we won't survive a direct engagement with their flagship, his first officer warned. Alan's expression was grim but determined. We don't need to survive. We just need to stop that weapon. The Defiance accelerated toward the massive Vexari flagship, weapons hot and ready. They were not alone. From hidden positions around Earth orbit, other human vessels emerged, all equipped with phase shift technology, all targeting the flagship. The damaged USS Defiance led the attack on the Vexari flagship, its engines straining as it accelerated toward the massive alien vessel. Captain Alan Wright stood at the command center, his face illuminated by the red glow of battle stations. Around him, his crew worked with grim determination. They all knew this might be their final mission. Time to intercept? Alan asked. 3 minutes, Captain, replied the navigation officer. The Vexari gravity weapon will be fully charged in 4 minutes and 20 seconds. Alan nodded. That gives us a narrow window. Status of our phase shift torpedoes? 6 remaining, sir. All primed and locked. Behind the Defiance, 5 other Earth vessels moved into formation. They were a motley fleet, vessels of different sizes and designs hastily equipped with the new technology. Some were military ships, others converted civilian craft. All were crewed by volunteers who understood the stakes. The Vexari noticed the approaching human fleet and diverted ships to intercept. Energy weapons flared across the darkness of space. 2 Earth vessels took direct hits, their shields failing under the onslaught. One exploded in a brief silent flash. The other drifted, disabled but not destroyed. Evasive pattern Delta, Alan ordered as the Defiance shuddered under enemy fire. All ships continued toward the flagship. We must stop that weapon. On Mars, Commander Susan Bailey watched the battle through sensor feeds. Her hands clenched so tightly her knuckles had turned white. Beside her, Dr. Olivia Martinez worked frantically at her console, trying to find a way to disrupt the Vexari gravity weapon remotely. If we could send a power surge through their battle network, Olivia suggested, we might be able to destabilize the weapon. Lieutenant Jack Peters shook his head. They've locked down network access to their flagship. They must have realized we breached their systems. Susan studied the tactical display. Then it's up to Captain Wright and the fleet. How's our work on the phase shift amplifier? Almost ready, Olivia replied. But we need more time. Time was the one resource they didn't have. On Earth, the situation grew more desperate by the minute. Despite the successes in Chicago and other cities, Vexari ground forces still held significant territory. The planetary defense grid was working but straining under constant pressure. If the gravity weapon fired, none of it would matter. Earth would be torn apart. In orbit, the battle intensified as the human fleet closed in on the Vexari flagship. The Defiance took another hit, losing one of its remaining engines. Systems failed across multiple decks, and emergency bulkheads sealed automatically to prevent decompression. Hull breach on Deck 4, reported the damage control officer. Sealing now. Alan barely acknowledged the report, his eyes fixed on the approaching Vexari flagship. Its massive form dominated the view screen, bristling with weapon ports. At its center, a pulsing glow indicated the charging gravity weapon. 2 minutes to intercept, announced the navigation officer. Vexari weapon will be fully charged in 3 minutes and 15 seconds. Alan opened a channel to the remaining ships. All vessels prepare to concentrate fire on these coordinates. He transmitted the location of what intelligence suggested was the flagship's main power core. We'll only get one chance at this. On the Vexari flagship, High Commander Zexar watched the approaching human vessels with a mixture of anger and disbelief. These primitives should have surrendered days ago. Instead, they fought with increasingly effective weapons and tactics. Now they dared to directly challenge his command ship. Target the lead human vessel, he ordered. Full power to forward weapons. The flagship's main weapon array locked onto the Defiance and fired. The beam struck with devastating force, overwhelming the ship's already weakened shields. Alarms blared across the bridge as systems failed. Direct hit, the tactical officer reported, voice steady despite the chaos. Shields at 12%. Weapon still operational but power fluctuating. Alan gripped his command chair as the ship stabilized. Distance to target? 30 seconds to optimal firing range. Prepare all remaining torpedoes. Target their power core and the gravity weapon housing. The order was acknowledged as the crew made final preparations. Around them, the remaining Earth vessels moved into position, each targeting different critical systems on the flagship. Sir, called the communications officer. Incoming transmission from Mars facility. Alan nodded and Susan's face appeared on a secondary screen. Captain, we've completed the phase shift amplifier, she said without preamble. If you can plant a beacon on the flagship, we can create a localized disruption field. It might destabilize their gravity weapon. Understood, Alan replied. Sending a boarding team was never part of the plan, but we're out of options. How long will the disruption last? 3 minutes at most. The power requirements are enormous. It would have to be enough. Alan turned to his first officer. Prepare a boarding team. Volunteers only. Their mission is to plant the beacon as close to the gravity weapon as possible. I'll lead it, said the first officer immediately. Alan wanted to object, but knew there was no time for debate. Go. We'll provide cover fire and distraction. As the boarding team prepared, the Defiance and its companion ships closed to firing range. All ships fire on my mark, Alan ordered over the fleet channel. 3, 2, 1, mark. Phase shift torpedoes and energy weapons struck the Vexari flagship simultaneously from multiple directions. The massive vessel's shields flickered under the assault. Some weapons penetrated, striking the hull and causing visible damage. It wasn't enough to disable the ship, but it created confusion and divided the Vexari's attention. In that moment of chaos, a small shuttle launched from the Defiance's bay, accelerating toward a damaged section of the flagship's hull. Inside, the first officer and 5 volunteers prepared for what might be a one-way mission. "Approaching breach point," reported the shuttle pilot. 30 seconds to contact." The first officer checked his phase shift pistol, a weapon developed from the captured Vexari technology. "Remember, our only objective is to plant the beacon as close to the gravity weapon as possible. Avoid engagement if you can." The shuttle attached to the flagship's hull with magnetic clamps. Cutting tools quickly created an entry point and the boarding team pushed inside. They found themselves in a maintenance corridor, emergency lights casting eerie shadows on the alien architecture. "This way," said the team's navigator, following the schematics derived from Jack Peters' access to the Vexari battle network. The gravity weapon control room should be 2 levels up. The team moved quickly through the corridors, encountering minimal resistance at first. The Vexari had not expected humans to board their vessel. When they did meet alien crew members, their phase shift weapons proved devastatingly effective, passing through Vexari personal shields as if they weren't there. Meanwhile, the battle outside intensified. The Defiance took another direct hit, losing weapon control on its port side. 2 more Earth vessels were disabled, leaving only the Defiance and 1 other ship still fighting. "Gravity weapon charging at 90%, reported the Defiance's science officer. "Estimated time to full power 1 minute 20 seconds. Alan opened a channel to the boarding team. "Status." "We've reached the upper level," replied the first officer, his voice overlaid with static. "Heavy resistance. 3 team members down, approaching the control room now." Inside the flagship, the first officer and his 2 remaining team members fought their way toward the pulsing heart of the gravity weapon. Vexari defenders had finally organized a response, and alien weapons fire filled the corridor ahead. "Cover me," the first officer told his companions. He removed the beacon from his pack, a small device containing phase shift technology that would connect with the amplifier on Mars. "I need to get closer." His team provided covering fire as he darted forward, dodging energy bolts. A shot grazed his arm, burning through his suit and into flesh. He barely felt the pain, focusing entirely on his mission. 20 meters to go, 10, 5. With a final lunge, he reached the entrance to the control room. Inside, he could see the gravity weapon's control matrix, a glowing column of energy surrounded by Vexari technicians. He activated the beacon and hurled it through the doorway. "Beacon deployed," he reported to the Defiance. "Activating now." On Mars, Olivia received the signal. "Beacon online. Initiating amplifier sequence." The phase shift amplifier powered up, drawing enormous energy from the facility's reactors. A targeted beam shot toward Earth orbit, invisible but powerful. When it reached the beacon on the Vexari flagship, the effect was immediate and dramatic. A phase shift field expanded from the beacon, engulfing the gravity weapon and its surrounding systems. Vexari technology within the field began to malfunction. The weapon's charging sequence stuttered and destabilized. On the flagship's bridge, alarms sounded as High Commander Zexar received reports of the weapon's failure. "What is happening?" he demanded. "Unknown energy field detected near the gravity weapon," reported a subordinate. "The power core is becoming unstable. Containment systems failing." Zexar realized the humans had somehow turned the Vexari's own phase shift technology against them. "Shut down the gravity weapon," he ordered. "Divert all power to containment." The destruction of the Vexari flagship marked a turning point in the war, but not its end. 3 days after the explosion that lit up Earth's skies, the remaining alien vessels regrouped. Without their high commander and main command ship, they lacked coordination, but they still possessed superior technology and numbers. 7 major Vexari warships remained in orbit, each powerful enough to continue the assault on Earth. The USS Defiance limped back to the Mars facility for emergency repairs. Captain Alan Wright stood in the observation room, watching as crews worked to patch hull breaches and replace damaged systems. His uniform was torn and stained, his face marked with cuts and bruises from when his bridge had nearly depressurized during their escape from the flagship's destruction. Commander Susan Bailey entered the room, her expression a mixture of exhaustion and determination. "The Vexari fleet is moving again," she reported without preamble. "They're targeting our remaining defense installations." Alan nodded, unsurprised. "They're angry. We've done what 17 other worlds couldn't. We've hurt them. Now they want revenge." "We intercepted communications between their remaining ships," Susan said. "They've requested reinforcements from their homeworld." This news sent a chill through Alan. Earth had barely survived the initial invasion force. If reinforcements arrived, the planet would have no chance.
How long do we have?
Based on the communication protocols Lieutenant Peters decoded, the nearest Vexari support fleet is 3 weeks away. 3 weeks to either win this war or prepare for an even larger invasion. Alan turned from the viewport to face Susan directly. What's the status of Dr. Martinez's work on the captured drive technology? That's the other reason I'm here, Susan replied. She wants to show us something. They made their way through the busy corridors of the Mars facility to the main research lab. Inside, Dr. Olivia Martinez stood before a holographic display showing what appeared to be engine schematics. Dark circles under her eyes testified to days without proper rest, but her expression was animated, almost excited. "Captain, Commander," she greeted them. "Thank you for coming. We've made a breakthrough with the Vexari drive system." Alan studied the display, though the technical details were beyond his expertise. "What am I looking at, Doctor?" "The Vexari use a form of quantum displacement for faster-than-light travel," Olivia explained. "We've managed to adapt it to our own technology. In simple terms, we can now build engines that can match their speed." Susan's eyes widened as she understood the implications. "You're saying we could pursue them if they retreat, or reach their homeworld?" Olivia nodded. "Exactly. And there's more. The database we captured from their scout ship contains the locations of the 17 other worlds they've conquered. Some of those civilizations might still exist under Vexari control. The possibility changed everything. Earth had been fighting for survival, but now they could consider something more: liberation of other conquered species, perhaps even taking the fight to the Vexari homeworld itself. On Earth, the battle continued. The planetary defense grid strained under repeated Vexari attacks but held. Ground forces pushed back against alien troops in major cities. The Chicago victory had become a template, with urban defenders using phase shift technology to create killing zones for Vexari soldiers. Sydney was reclaimed street by street. Moscow never fell. New defensive lines around London held firm. In orbit, the remaining Earth vessels harried the Vexari fleet, using hit-and-run tactics. They couldn't match the aliens in direct confrontation, but they could disrupt their operations, keep them off balance, and buy time for ground forces to secure more territory. 1 week after the flagship's destruction, representatives from every major Earth government convened in the underground Strategic Command Center in Nebraska. The facility had been designed to withstand nuclear strikes, and so far had escaped Vexari detection. President Diane Foster presided over the meeting, her normally immaculate appearance now showing signs of strain. Like everyone else, she had been working around the clock since the invasion began. "The latest intelligence suggests the Vexari fleet is preparing for a major offensive," she told the assembled leaders. "They intend to overwhelm our defenses before their reinforcements arrive." General Kevin Howard stepped forward to present the military assessment. "Our ground forces continue to make progress, but we cannot withstand another full-scale bombardment from orbit. The planetary defense grid is already operating at 120% of designed capacity. If it fails, we lose everything." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Earth had fought valiantly, but they might have only delayed the inevitable. Then Captain Alan Wright, recently returned from Mars, stood up. "Madam President, we have another option." All eyes turned to him as he outlined the plan developed with Dr. Martinez and Commander Bailey. Using the adapted Vexari drive technology, they would launch a strike at the heart of the alien fleet, not just to disable their ships, but to capture them. "With their own vessels under our control," he explained, "we can turn their weapons against them. And once this invasion force is defeated, we can use their faster-than-light capability to reach other conquered worlds before reinforcements arrive." "You're proposing to steal their entire fleet?" asked the Chinese premier incredulously. "Yes," Alan replied simply. "They came to our world expecting us to kneel. Instead, we'll take everything they brought to our doorstep and use it against them." The audacity of the plan stunned the assembly into silence. Finally, President Foster spoke. "What do you need to make this happen, Captain?" "Every phase-shift weapon we can produce. Every trained pilot and engineer. And volunteers for boarding parties, people willing to risk everything." The next 48 hours saw frantic preparation across the planet. In hidden facilities, weapons were manufactured and distributed. Pilots trained in simulators programmed with Vexari ship schematics. Engineers studied alien technology, looking for weaknesses that boarding parties could exploit. The plan required perfect timing. Earth's remaining ships would engage the Vexari fleet, drawing their attention. Meanwhile, specially equipped transport vessels would approach from multiple vectors carrying boarding teams. Phase shift technology would allow them to penetrate Vexari shields and hulls. Once aboard, they would use the lessons learned from the flagship operation to disable key systems and capture the vessels. On the eve of the operation, Captain Alan Wright addressed the combined boarding teams from the bridge of the repaired USS Defiance. Over 500 volunteers prepared to risk their lives, knowing many would not return. "Tomorrow we take the fight directly to the enemy," he told them. They came to our world expecting submission. They found resistance instead. Now we will show them the full measure of human determination. The attack began at dawn. Earth vessels emerged from hiding, engaging the Vexari fleet in a coordinated assault. The aliens responded predictably, focusing their superior firepower on the apparent threat. They failed to detect the transport ships approaching from the dark side of the moon until it was too late. Boarding operations commenced simultaneously on 5 Vexari warships. Phase shift cutters carved entry points through shields and hulls. Teams of humans armed with weapons that could bypass alien defenses fought their way to control centers and engine rooms. The fighting was brutal and chaotic, with casualties on both sides. On the bridge of the Defiance, Alan watched the operation unfold through tactical displays and communication feeds. "Status of boarding teams?" he asked tensely. "Alpha team has secured engine control on Target 1, reported the communications officer. Beta and Charlie teams reporting heavy resistance on targets 2 and 3. Delta team has reached the bridge of Target 4 but is pinned down. Echo team," the officer paused. "Echo team reports success. They've taken control of Target 5's weapon systems. One by one, the boarding teams gained control of critical systems. Not all succeeded. 2 teams were lost entirely and others suffered heavy casualties. But 3 Vexari vessels were fully captured, their crews contained or neutralized. A 4th was partially controlled, with humans and aliens fighting deck by deck for supremacy. The tide turned when the captured ships began firing on their companions. Vexari commanders, faced with weapons they couldn't defend against fired by their own vessels, fell into disarray. Some attempted to retreat only to find their engines disabled by precision strikes. Others fought to the last, their ships eventually disabled or destroyed. When the battle ended, humanity had captured 5 Vexari warships intact. 2 others were destroyed and 1 managed to escape, jumping to faster than light speed before it could be disabled. In the aftermath, as damage was assessed and casualties counted, Earth's leaders gathered again to determine their next steps. The immediate threat had been neutralized, but Vexari reinforcements were still coming. Dr. Olivia Martinez presented her analysis of the captured database. The nearest conquered world is a planet called Nexara. Its people resisted the Vexari for almost a year before falling. Many likely still survive under occupation. Potential allies, President Foster noted, echoing Alan's earlier assessment. "How quickly can we reach them with our captured ships?" 2 weeks at maximum speed, Olivia replied, just before the Vexari reinforcements would arrive here.